Hello, thanks for everybody coming back in so quickly, shortening your coffee break a little bit. We're going to try and keep this running to time. My name's James Cadwell. I am the lead partner solution architect for Northern EMEA in VMware. I know quite a few of you as you're from my partner community, so hello, good to see you. In my other life, which I've included in the photo over here, this is me, my brothers, and my uncle, and we're in a country rock band, which explains the beard, okay? It's currently at ZZ Top. I've been told I'm not allowed to go for Wizard, but I am working on it. So, what I wanted to talk about today is to share some insights into design thinking, not necessarily how VMware are using it as such, but really just to give you a bit of a taster about it, because really understanding design thinking is 2 days in itself. So I'm going to try and compress what would normally be 2 days of learning down into 45 minutes. So it could be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But really what I'd like for you from today is maybe it just gets in your head, you get interested in the idea, you get interested in the approach, that it might be something that you want to adopt or look into, get yourself sent off on a training course, so that when you're working with your own users, your own customers, perhaps your own partners, you've got something else in your kit bag in an alternative approach to the traditional ways of launching new products and new services. So, key point here being it's user-centric. Now, this is my colleague, Andreas Greiner. His great quote here is that design thinking combines two seemingly incompatible areas, which is creativity and structure. So how do we bring structure to creativity in order to innovate? The traditional approach says, hello Kev, build it and they will come. But it's a common mistake. Henry Ford allegedly said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So the common traditional approach is we come up with a brilliant idea, then we try and sell it. Look, there we go. Already in and the blipper doesn't want to go. Right. So the conventional innovation process, as I've said, is the Lone Star genius thinking approach. So think Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, one of those, James Dyson. The brilliant engineer, the brilliant inventor comes up with an idea. They then find somebody with some money, whether that be their own business or some investors. They justify their brilliant idea to get some budget. They then develop that idea. Then they'll manufacture or create that new product, new service, whatever. Then they'll go and find the customer or the user and take that idea to market. But is it any wonder that not every product or solution is bought? Because if you leave the users to the really late stage of the process, then you haven't really tested the waters to find out if anybody wants it. So for every Tesla, there are probably 100 other ideas that haven't gone anywhere. So if you follow this approach, you're at a great risk of expending a large amount of time, effort, and budget before you launch your new product or your service. So design thinking fixes this dilemma, hopefully, by taking a more user or human-centered approach to that innovation. So if we're looking at that traditional approach, the aspects that the Lone Star Genius creativity innovation approach takes very much focuses on the three things that you need for innovation, right? People, business, and technology. The Lone Star Genius will find out what is technologically feasible, and as we saw in the process, he'll then take it to the business to justify the investment. But, as we've said, nobody is looking to see what the people want. Is it usable? Is it desirable? So before I press on, let's have a talk through design thinking as an example, and how moving from just creating something and hoping somebody wants it to what can happen if you switch to a more user-centric approach. So there was a children's hospital in Pittsburgh that brought in new MRI scanners for the pediatric department. But they were having a real issue in that the quality of the imaging that they were getting from the machines was awful. Almost unusable. The kids were going in the machines and they were wriggling and they didn't like it. And there was even quite a high percentage of the kids having to be sedated before they went in the machines. So it was loud, it was small in there, and it was really tight. So a guy called Doug Dietz, who was the lead designer, he worked with the engineers to try and make the machine quieter. Then they thought, well, how can we stop the kids from feeling isolated when they're inside? So they put some mirrors in so the kids could look up at the mirrors and look out and see what's going on. But neither thing worked. So in desperation, Doug booked himself on a week's design thinking course and then returned to the hospital. So they started a design thinking engagement, and Doug brought together, the doctors, people from the childcare centres, people from local schools, as well as some parents, of the kids that, were being treated. And he talked to them to try and understand what the experience was, for the kids. And it became really clear that the kids were absolutely terrified by going into this machine. So suddenly, whilst this was a technological marvel and the possibilities of what it could achieve was fantastic, nobody had thought about the user experience. So having all of this millions of dollars worth of equipment was nothing, because the kids hated it. They were terrified. They didn't want to go in there. So what they did, by thinking about how the children experienced and interacted with the machine, they painted it like a pirate ship and created a story for the scanner operators to work through with the kids when they came in for their appointment. And the operators would say to the kids, now, if you want to be the pirate captain, you're going to need to be brave. You're going to need to have courage. You're going to need to lead the ship. And the easiest way to show your courage is that you need to be brave and lie quietly in the machine. And the booming of the machines was built into the story that the operator was telling the kids over the speakers while they were in there. And it became the boom of the cannons, and it was built into the story. And the quality of the images that they were able to gather suddenly increased. And the number of children that actually needed to be sedated dropped dramatically. So building on the success of this, they then developed 9 other stories for the other MRI machines around the state. So there's also a space adventure, a submarine adventure. So suddenly they've transformed the user experience to be able to get the value from the millions of dollars of technology. If these, sorry, where's Chris? Clickable link. Sorry. Hopefully this will get shared and then you can. I should have done terrible. Should have done a QR code. So what is the design thinking process? How do we go about becoming more user-centric in our interactions with our users, with our customers, with our partners? So the design thinking process is talked about as the double diamond model. So it's split into a couple of spaces. So there's the problem space here, and then the solution space. Now, for us, as engineers, architects, consultants, it's our nature to very quickly move into the solution space because that's what we love. That's what gets us excited. We want to get on with solving the problem. We want to be creating an amazing lab or a proof of concept or a pilot using the latest and greatest, technology that we can get our hands on. But what we do with design thinking is encourage you to spend more time in the problem space, understanding the user and defining the problems that they're facing. So by spending time in here, we can understand the current mode of operation. What works? What doesn't work? What are the highlights? What are the things that they like? What are the lowlights? And then collect all of those problems, as many as you can get, and then start categorizing them and prioritizing to understand what the most burning problem is. As you move into the solution space, it's then where you're encouraged to use creativity to find as many ideas as possible until you find the most amazing solution to that problem. But again, before rushing on to that POC, that pilot, spending an awful lot of money on, whatever it is, 60 grand on some amazing bit of kit that you need in order to make it happen, keep it simple and create a prototype, which could be just a story or something simple that explains to the user or the customer or the partner the great idea that you've had and how it's going to fix the problem that has been defined. The key here, though, is that this isn't just a linear process. This is an iterative process. So you go through and then you come back whenever you've learned something or you've discovered something. So you might go through once. Can I walk in front without ruining the video? Sorry. You might walk all the way through the process with your users and you get to the end, you've tested it, and they say, do you know what? This is the most brilliant thing we've ever seen. But actually, it would be more meaningful if it solved this problem for us instead, which is more urgent. No problem. We're going to iterate. We're going to go back, going to redefine the problem, build on our ideas again, build a new prototype and test it, and repeat and repeat and refine until you get to the best solution. again, rather than that Lone Star genius going through and finding a market. Let's have a dig down into what it is that we want by this iterative process. David Kelly says, we want to fail early to succeed sooner. So by keeping it simple, by keeping it light, by keeping it agile, failing faster, we can learn quicker without having spent a lot of money on equipment, resources, or time. Why spend months? I'm reading my own quote here, which is very good for my ego. Why spend months redesigning a house that someone doesn't like when the answer might have been just to repaint and change the colour of the door? There we go. Have a think about what it is that you're trying to achieve. So let's have a look in the problem space itself. Embrace the problem space. Take the time to understand your users and your customers. Immerse yourself in the user's environment. I know it's a bit scary coming out of the IT cupboard to actually go and hang with the customers themselves. Spend some time observing what it is that they're doing and how is it they're achieving it. Is there a lot of paper involved? Are they still running a business critical application on Access? On an NT4 server that's running under somebody's desk? We've all been there. Speak to users and ask them why they're doing something like that. Even if you think you already know the answer, let yourself be surprised. Listen to their war stories, listen to their pain, but fight that, that thing that we all want to do as engineers, architects, and consultants, to start moving to the solution. Let them talk. Don't interpret what they're doing. Gather that information. The top tip here is, when you're having this conversation, you focus in on the conversation. You focus in on the interaction with the user and take somebody with you to write it all down. Top tip. In this empathise mode, move into the role of an explorer. Pretend that you know nothing. Don't evaluate, don't judge. Just take the time to listen to their experiences and understand. We talk about it in our sales process about active listening, how any conversation with a user or a customer, to get value from it, should be 70% of the time us listening. Whereas the default mode is we go in, we meet the customer, we batter them to death with an hour of PowerPoint about product. We all need to move away from that and listen and understand, and that will give you real insight into users and their needs. Step 2 in our user space is then defining what you've heard from them in terms of, what problems is it that they're facing. Now, customers, users can sometimes be a little bit reticent or actually not know where to start here. So there are a few techniques that you can use in order to get them going. So what you could do is you could come up with some issues or some statements where you've done some research with what the analysts are saying, or experiences that you've had with other similar customers or with similar partners or similar users, and perhaps just say, from our experience of working with a customer in a similar industry as you, we're seeing that they're facing this problem. Is this something that you're experiencing with? So even if they don't want to engage initially, people love to disagree, or if they feel like they're not alone, they're going to agree with you. So again, you could do problem statements and just say, do you agree or do you disagree? Just to get, just to start the conversation. How do you get them going? The other thing is we will often hold back on sharing because we're so overwhelmed with the scale of what the issue is that we don't know where to start. So encourage them not to boil the ocean, or don't try and eat the elephant all in one go. And the whole point of design thinking is you're trying to get down from this enormous ocean of what are all these things that are their concerns, down to something tangible that you can come away with, create something either in a prototype, test it, and then move on from there. So you can then build on that success from that single success and start building up the momentum. So we're now moving into where we're all a lot more comfortable again as architects, engineers, consultants, is that into that solution space. But it's something that takes practice. The best way to have a good idea is to have many ideas. Can you see that on the screen? It's quite low down. But this isn't something that happens naturally. We want to share, but there's a process of filtration that goes on in our mind too. We're also worried about people judging what it is that we're saying, or that somebody will say, oh, it's a stupid idea. So in the sessions that you're creating with your customers, with your users, with your partners, it's really important to create an atmosphere where it feels like a safe space, judgment-free. Just bring out those ideas. So a good way to do this is just to start with something simple. How do you encourage ideas, but in a simple way? You just bring them out. So interactive time, everybody. This is 30 seconds of your life. In your heads, don't need to write it down. You have 30 seconds starting from now. Think of things that are round. $15 seconds left. Think of things that are round. Boo! So our natural inclination when we're asked to think of something like that, or any, just come up with ideas to solve any kind of problem, is that there's a natural filtration process that goes in our heads first, where we try and summarize our thinking. So maybe you thought of a planet, or a ball, an orange, that's round. A tyre. So we've already done the summarization in our head. We've decided to categorize them. So when we were then asked to present at the end of this process, to make sure that we don't look daft, we're going to have done this categorization already. But this is 4 ideas that you had in 30 seconds. What if you actually listed all of the different planets here? And the person I got this slide from had Pluto in this list, which I took out because I didn't want to cause an argument while we were here. A ball, yes, that's round, great. But what about a basketball, tennis ball, table tennis ball, volleyball, beach volleyball? They're all the same thing. Different types of tyre. Car, bicycle, bike, mountain bike, rollerblade. How many different types of orange can you come up with? And that took Googling, I promise you. So our natural inclination was to do that summarization, to do that categorization, to pre-filter before we then explain to everybody else. We had 4 ideas, but actually there were probably 30 plus ideas going on in our head that if we'd just been, relaxed and approachable, felt like a safe space, no such thing as a stupid idea, we could have come up with a load more ideas. So as Linus Pauling said, the best way of coming up with a good idea is to have lots of ideas. So I won't go through all of these, but there's some great techniques available that you can use with your customers, with your users, in order to get as many ideas out of them as possible. So, brain writing, you just say, right, here's a pack of Post-it notes, fill the wall, you got 5 minutes, go, Again, you could, for people who are less comfortable in the group, they might not want to share those. But actually, if you've got somebody else sharing an idea, it's going to trigger something else. So you encourage them. If you get an idea triggered by what the other person is saying, write it down, share it. You can also, as a tool, mustn't stand in front of the screen, you can get pre-made inspiration cards that you can buy just in order to stimulate the thinking process, just to get people going, or you can make them yourselves. So you could come up with, what would Amazon do? So people have a common reference of a successful creative company. What if money was no object? So again, when you're categorizing and your ideas, you're thinking, oh, this might be too expensive. But take that constraint away from your user and you might find some really great ideas. The headstand technique. If you were going to do this thing really badly, what would you do? So if you were going to launch this product or service and it was going to be awful, how would you go about it? And so from that, you're going to learn what not to do to help you then create the ideas of the best way of doing it. So you're going to come up with a wall full of Post-it notes, brilliant ideas. But in order to get to something meaningful and to find some, what are the best things that you're going to take forward into a prototype? Again, there's some approaches that you can take. Maybe a survey would be the most comfortable thing for your users, or maybe just rearranging the Post-it notes into some categories, as in like voting, or if you've got the same idea being written by different users, collate them together to kind of show where people are in. There's convergence between those ideas. Okay, you could also categorize them by which ones were the big wow that was so beyond what they thought they could achieve, that let's put that right over there to say, this seemed like a silly idea, but maybe it's actually got legs. So there's some good, there's some, again, techniques for bringing them together, different ways, depending on whether you're doing this in person, all in one day, or over Zoom or whatever. So, okay. You've now collected your best ideas. So where we might have started off with 100, perhaps we're down to 2, 3 by this point. Let's now move forward with prototyping. But the key here, particularly in IT, is to keep it simple. What we all want to rush forward is we're going to go and find something on AWS. There's going to be some cool app that's going to solve this for us. Brilliant. But actually, maybe a mock-up of a GUI on a whiteboard or just some paper that we can show to the users and say, if this is what the app looked like, or this is how the data was presented, or this is how, the menu was going to look, how would you feel about that? And you've not spent any money on tech. You've not, been out and bought a new server. Just get your users' feedback on how it feels to them. Maybe if you're designing something physical, like a data center layout or a process flow within your application, creating something tangible, even if it's just out of paper or Lego or cardboard or pasta, so that you can get feedback from your users when they can actually see something. Keep it simple. Be prepared to experiment. And as you iterate this prototype, you can move from very low fidelity of paper and cardboard until you're actually getting to high fidelity, a fleshed out idea. Maybe then you start actually creating something in an application or in an infrastructure. So this is a nice example from Deutsche Bahn, the German train company. They wanted to launch a new service point, but one that was accessible. So their goal was that queues often built up at the service point because customers were asking the same question again and again, and also the counter wasn't accessible, to disabled people. So rather than spending millions on having multiple designs made out in wood and metal and plastic and spending a lot of money, they found an old, empty, disused train station, and they built their prototypes out of cardboard. They could then bring their users in to try out what the experience was like, then learn from it, update the cardboard prototype, ideate again, revisit, update it, then a more of a fully fleshed out prototype. Again, they've painted the cardboard, so again, not a big expense, hasn't taken a lot of time. And then that has then led to the real thing coming out at the end of the process, but without having spent, millions on lots of really expensive constructed prototypes along the way. There was a point. Yes, so this new design, based on what they learnt through cardboard, is now in 100 different stations in Germany. Again, sorry, Chris, clickable link. Oh, I should have read it before I did this, really, shouldn't I? So we've created our prototype. Maybe it's just on paper. Maybe it's just in cardboard. How do we actually go about learning from that? And that's through testing with our users. What's important for us as the creators of this, as the leaders of this, is not to immediately leap to trying to defend our ideas, defending our prototype. Be open. Learn from what the users are telling you. Refine the prototype and then repeat. So you might want to use, just a simple technique like this, where you draw this up on a whiteboard and then you get your users to use Post-it notes to give feedback and just put it in the different zones. Again, they might not be comfortable with sharing verbally, but happy to write it down on the post-it notes. So again, a nice simple technique that you can use there. Again, if a survey is more comfortable for them, that they can do it offline, create a form that they can fill it in, that they can tell you what's a must-have, what's a could-have, should-have, the Moscow technique, or what they like, what they didn't. Or again, if you're all together in a room, in a workshop, just break up some categories together on the wall to enable them to give feedback. And then you've got to ask the question is, did we solve the relevant problem, and is the solution desirable? And no is a valid answer. And that is in some ways even the ideal answer, because you iterate, you do it again, and you improve from what you've learnt. Iterate quickly, fail fast. Okay? So what have we learnt? We've learnt about the design thinking process, but why are we doing it again? It's to enable teams, whether that be your company or your partners that you're working with, to drive innovation, but from a human or user-centric approach, by taking the time to listen to them before you launch your new product or service. Resist working in the solution space straight away. Take time to work with the users to understand them, to define the problems, and create that problem space. Ideate fast. Encourage wild ideas. Create a safe space. When you move into the prototyping, keep it simple. Keep it light. Design thinking the idea here is it's about creating or reinvigorating your relationship with your users, with your customers, with the partners. The iterative nature of this as well means it's a constant process. And like anything that we do, the more we do it, the better that we'll get with it. So don't ever think about this as a one-off exercise. Build this into your processes. Build this into your sales cycle. The good news is we all love standards. We all love frameworks. Because of this iterative nature, it integrates into existing agile, TOGAF architecture, or ITIL, continuous service improvement processes, really nicely. So you bake this into what you've already got, and you keep doing it. You'll get better at it. You'll learn from it. Your users will come up, they'll get more comfortable with coming up with a million ideas rather than just saying planet orange ball, I will leave you with an email address there. If you need to learn more, designthinking@vmware.com. We have an informal group across the organisation that you can reach out to. If you see an opportunity where you might like to run a workshop with your customers, and actually, VMware's involvement would be useful, reach out. We've done a lot of these, particularly in Europe. We've done a few in the UK now, but don't think the door is closed. If we can help, then we will. Or if we can share the more detailed version of this big deck to help you out, or to do some train the trainer, etc. Just ping us. We might be able to help. Finally, just wanted to give you a real-world example of how design thinking was used at TV2 in Norway. Key points here. TV2 were thinking of giving up on using VMware products altogether. and we proposed a design thinking workshop to go in and understand from their perspective what issues they were facing. And it completely changed the dynamic with the customer. Leading off the back of it, the customer themselves requested follow-on meetings, which was a more detailed introduction and walkthrough of their own environment. So some good feedback there of it working in the real world. There are other examples, but I was limited to what I could share because of public forum, GDPR, all of that. But if we were to engage with you on an engagement with a customer or some users or a partner or whatever, we could share some more insight. But this was a publicly facing example I could share. So I have 3 minutes if there are any questions or comments. Look at this, everybody wowed. Yes, sir.
So, quick question around the 5 iterative processes that you mentioned from gathering ideas stage up to testing coming to solution. Since it's a CSI sort of process you have to go through, when you get to that sweet spot, when you actually know that so this is ready to go live, when do you accept that this is ready to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant question. It's one of these things where, because you're going on that journey with, I'm sorry I used the J word, because you're going on that journey with the customer, with the user themselves, you'll have gone through some iterations, you'll have done some testing, you'll have had a light bulb moment, you'll probably have had one that didn't work, but you've learned from it. Then there'll be a moment that you'll go, actually, I think we can move on here. We've got one really great idea that we can do something with. So let's build out a pilot environment, or let's do an actual mock-up of a GUI or something. Then you're beginning to build the momentum. Then you're going and building out the use case. Then you're asking your management or the customer to hand in the pocket, put some money behind it. But there's no particular answer. It's down to feel. It's how the relationship has changed. The whole point of this is be focused. It's better to be working on one really good idea, creating one really good prototype, than trying to change the world. Focusing on solving their DR issue. Don't refactor the whole company to move them into the cloud. Let's pick out something. You're also building trust. You're building a relationship with the customer as well. And if you're working with your users, you're gaining insight in them as well, meaning stuff you're going to do in the future is more likely to be successful. So,
Just finally, if you've got any challenges around issues say, with the customer using VMware, is it okay to just go to design thinking at VMware.com to start this session?
yeah, I mean, if you think you've got an opportunity, but you don't know you don't know how to sell it, I don't mean actually monetary sell it, but how do you pitch it to your customer? Maybe you could help by taking VMware along with you. Drop us a mail. The door is open. This is something that is centrally funded. We've got 4 or 5 pre-packaged design thinking engagements that we can work with you, or there might be a custom opportunity that your VMware account team and their SEs can come and help you along, but bring a design thinking trained facilitator along into those meetings with you. So there's a world of possibilities to how. But yeah, best thing to do, drop us a mail. You know, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah, we'd like, if you think you've got something, let us know, please. Anything else? Excellent. Oh, I'm 2 minutes over. Sorry about that. Is Linda in the room, or have I got away with it? Whew. Thank you very much.